Today I want to talk to you about how to read books. Now, I've mentioned this a few times before in my previous videos, that reading books, the proper reading of books, is really an art. It's a way of finding connection with the unconscious in between the words that you're reading. That's what's really going on. So what you're really doing is finding a center. And the core of the center, if you remember in many of my talks, previous talks, and in my writing that I published, for instance, on Facebook, the core of the center is the self or intuition. So you have this connection. He always does this when I'm talking. He'll go up on top of the cage and start screaming. Anyway, so the correct reading of books. I'm going to go into which books to read next time, but because many of you have actually asked, so which books should I read and which are good and which are not so good. I would say, I'll go into this in more detail next time. I would say all books are good. It really does not matter which book you read, but the way you read it makes a difference. Now, the way I read books, for instance, I like, as you can imagine, I like everything with symbols as with mythology. Now, there's a reason for that, because when you are already reading in the language of the soul, which is mythology, and it's symbols, tree, water, the goddess, sacred animals, dog, deer, hedgehog, or a rabbit, or a frog. All these matter because what it is. See, I stop and hey, shush. All these matter. All these symbols matter because what happens then is you are already getting involved in the language of the soul, which is a symbolic, a mythopoetic language. It's a pictorial language of nature, which we have developed as a human race for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. We have named a cave is the center, a waterfall is the center, a well is the center, a tree is the center. A tree is the center of that cosmic axis that mediates this, what you're looking for in your reading, what you're trying to connect with or trying to find this inner center within you, because the tree's got its branches above and it's got branches below, the roots, and it's the invisible part you're trying to connect to. So when you're reading, the way I read is I always have a pen. Let me just show you. I always have a pen, and when I'm reading, for instance, this is Anne Baring and Jules Cashford, one of my favorite books, and it's full of these symbols. It's full of references to the unconscious, the language of the soul. This is the feminine, by the way. The feminine is the language of nature, the symbolic, the mythopoetic language of nature. You see? So when I read, I even got something marked here. I can't remember what it is because I've read it quite a long time ago. But this is how I read. Let me show you. See? Can you see? So if something jumps up at me at that moment, I'm looking for a place. I'm looking for trends. Shut up. I'm looking for something that's going to move me. Suddenly I'm going to have an aha moment. So what happens is it's not so much the words and the structure that is important, what you're going to read from cover to cover. It is, let me just close the door because he won't let go. Terrible. Just when I'm doing the video, you decide to be verbal. Anyway, so what you're looking for is that space in between words that suddenly something occurs to you. It just jumps at you and you go, oh my gosh, this is it. And that's when I write down things. And when I write down things, I might make a little poem out of it. So you see, there's something, let me just show you. See, like here. I have underlined, but I also made a little, sometimes it's a realization. What I used to call before I was reading books of mythology, that was, in my early 20s, I used to call this you know, what did I used to say? Just realizing things. I used to say, oh, I walk around, because even back then, I had a notepad and pencil with me. And I was just realizing things. Something just came to me, you know, when you open out the back, as it were, intuitively into the unconscious. And when you have a question, it will answer you, but you have to be ready to catch that revelation. So this is the same with reading books. And this is how we read books. You see, we kind of glance at it and we read, and it's not so much the words, the one word following another word that makes sense. It is something that it's just in between those words. I'm gonna get angry at you in a minute. Just when I decided to do a video. You were quiet before. Terrible. So it is just in that moment, you know, I write it down. And I'm going to, a lot of my writing, for instance, if any of you are following me, especially on Facebook, a lot of my writing was exactly like that. I have found something, I might have been even collecting words or phrases. I write to dusters. That's how you write. You collect phrases or words that you like, and then you put them together in your own writing, in your own little poem. So that's the really, so what you're trying to do here is when you're reading, you're trying to find that trance state where it's going to let go of your ego, and in that gap in between the words, something is going to come to you, a realization. It works even better when you have a question, for instance, if you want to know something, and then it will just come in those spaces. What reading actually does, it quietens your mind. It quietens your activity. It quietens your activity in the outside. You see, you're letting go of being preoccupied with the outside world, all the demands on you. You got to do this, you got to go to work, you got to get up, you got to go and cook dinner, go to the shop. All that comes to an end, and you are just being you and the other you, the divine you, you know, your divine part, the unconscious. You're making a conscious connection to the unconscious, if you like. You see? So in that moment, when you find that trance state, it might take, you know, for people who are really busy, the extroverts especially, the intellectuals, the people that have lived their whole lives through studies and they know theory really well, but they don't know experience or mysticism really well. It will take numerous times to quieten yourself down until something happens. But when it happens, always write down whatever it is, even if this really, really small, something insignificant. It feels like, oh, it's not important. It is. It is really important. Then you write it down, you make a little poem out of it. So this is Jules Cashford. I'm going to talk about the books that, you know, helpful to read. So this is one of them. Another one that I did, I used to do exactly the same way was Joseph Campbell. I read pretty much everything by Joseph Campbell. And this is his Goddesses, Mysteries of the Feminine Divine. So it's exactly the same here. You know, you will see my scribbles everywhere, and on the side I will write something. And this is how you make a connection to the unconscious. This is one of the ways that you make a connection to the unconscious. The other way, you could be sitting in the car and the number plate in front of you has something to say to you, or you're standing in a queue in the bank or whatever, and there's the conversation between the two people that are just in front of you. Then you will catch something that will be meaningful to you because you're wanting an answer to a question, and then in those words there will be an answer. They might not understand. The people that are talking and having a conversation have no idea what it means to you. That's not important, but to you it matters. I'm sure I've told you the story of the man that gave me the little tape recorder when I was traveling through Scandinavia in Norway. The poet, he called himself a poet. He used to carry a tarot deck with him always. He always pull the cards out, and that's how I got introduced to the tarot. He gave me the little tape recorder. He says, I don't know what this means, how important this is going to be for you, but I know you have to have it. So that means, you know, that you're mediating What the future was for me personally was to be a mediator between the collective unconscious and humanity. And that's being at the center. That's being the center. Everyone's the center, but not everyone is connected to it, to the other dimension, to the dimension of the spirit. So this is Joseph Campbell. I'll be talking again about books that you are helpful to read in the next video. I'm not going to have this video very long because he won't let me talk. Now, this is my book. Some of you might have read it already. Where We Dream the Single Dream, A Quest Beyond the Veil of Time for the Divine Feminine, the Soul. This is me. Now, I designed the book myself. So what I did, if you have a look, see how much space you have on the margins on the outside to write and to underline. Look at this. Lots of space. I did this on purpose because you see lots of spacing between paragraphs as well, so you can write. Even at the back of the book, I think I got several pages empty for notes. Because reading, it's not reading from cover to cover and off you go to the next book. The real reading is for you to center yourself, clear your head, clear your mind, your ego out of the way. You're not being pulled in different directions by the demands of people around you, but you are centered, and then something begins to happen. That's the magic that begins to happen. You create a connection to the unconscious, and then the unconscious starts to speak to you through you. A message is perhaps for you, personal message, that's something you want to know, or something for the community, for people, for things that need to be talked about in our community, which have been neglected for thousands of years. And one of these most important things is by far the feminine. And the feminine has, the soul. That's the soul, the realm of the spirit, the collective unconscious. And it has its own language. So when it starts to speak to you, it will speak to you in its own language. It's not going to say, Jean, you shouldn't be eating so many bananas, or you should be eating far more healthy stuff like avocado or whatnot. You can, if that's what your question was, how can I be more healthy? But the real communication starts when the unconscious, the collective unconscious, starts to speak to you in its own language. So you're going to have symbols. You're going to have this mythopoetic, mythological symbols. There's colors that are important. Silver, gold, blue, red. The basic colors, blue, red, yellow, green, gold. Like I said, silver is the color of the unconscious, of the feminine. Gold is the color of the masculine, of the sun. Silver is the moon. So you got to learn all these languages. In here, you will find most of the more important symbols and explanations of these symbols. That's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to tell you the story of how to connect to the unconscious, the things that worked for me, and then how to interpret the archetypal images and dreams and poetry that is going to come through you. Because it has its own language. You cannot just go and say, look, I'm going to make my personal associations, and silver means this to me, and tree means, I got to plant another tree in my backyard, or, a water means I got to drink more water. No. For your personal things, maybe, but to the collective unconscious, to the unconscious that we all share as a whole humanity, no. It has its own specific meaning, and that you have to learn. Otherwise, I see all these interpretations, especially on the internet, and they got completely wrong, completely off the base. People start going, oh, what does it mean to me? Some people go and get excited. I've dreamt that I was given a winning lotto and I'm going to win millions. Well, maybe you will, maybe you won't, but you usually won't. This kind of winning ticket thing is usually given by the self, by the image of the self. It means you are going to perhaps winning the energy back to yourself. You have basically learned to introvert more and look into your own inner resources, your own inner answers. So the energy flows now inward rather than out. And that's why we really run around our whole life chasing money, because money is your energy. your life force, your energy. So if you haven't got enough, you feel you never have enough, then you're always going to be chasing it. And money is simply image of the spirit, because it connects two things together. I have money and I want something. So it's a relationship exchange. That's your intuition. So for today, that'll be all, I think. I mean, reading is not that easy, really. The real reading is not easy. You can read from cover to cover, and you're not going to get anything. And off you go to the next book, you collect the facts, you remember some things, but you're not going to get the connection to the unconscious. So the best books, I will talk about this in the next video, the best books by far are books written on mythology with symbols, on fairy tales, books written by Joseph Campbell, by Jung, by Anne Baring, by books written by Maria Gimbutas, for instance. You know, she uses a lot of symbology in her books as well. It's studying the mythology, not so much studying the mythology, but using the symbols. The way I used to do it before I had books and the internet was already running, I used to go to Wikipedia, and I had a dream, for instance, of a tree, you know, a flowering tree. And I knew that doesn't mean that the tree in my backyard is going to flower, but the tree within me, the holy tree within me is flowering. Now, why is it a tree? So I went into Wikipedia, I typed in tree, and I wasn't interested in, you know, what type of and when these trees are going to flower and what their names and scientific names is and how many roots it has. I went straight away into the religious significance of a tree. And there you will find that in every religion has a holy tree. So that's your center, that's your cosmic axis. And that, by the way, is intuition, your soul. Because like I said, the tree is in two parts. It's above and below, the visible and invisible. That's the threshold. That's the center that mediates between the two things. So when you're reading, you know, when you're underlining, when you're building this connection to the unconscious, you are becoming that tree. You are becoming that center. You are becoming, in that moment of revelation and of trance, where the two sides, you're in one foot in this reality visible and the other in the world of the spirit that speaks its own mythological language. You are becoming whole. Your personal unconscious, the person you are, for instance, John Smith, and the collective unconscious that you are. No longer a person, no longer just particular person, but you're everybody and everything. Because you're not merely just the world of the spirit, but you're the spirit is reflected or underlines everything in our reality. So it's, you know, the birds, the bees, the trees, the air, the earth, all of humanity. That's why I put such a stress on this terrible way of treating, for instance, Russians at the moment. This terrible Russophobia, this, you know, Anglo-Saxons versus the East and the Russians. You're not to divide yourself like this. You're not like that. Underneath all the political rubbish and things that are trying to divide us, we are all just one reality, one power embodying itself in various, in infinite number of unique ways. So, you know, that's so really important to understand, that there is oneness in eternity, there's unity in eternity. That's what you really are. So when I see all these things that people are wrapping themselves in this flag and rejecting the other flag, and such terrible things are being said about one humanity and the others, and love and light for the other, that is division. You're not like that. In reality, you are not like that. You are both. You are the West and the East, the superior Anglo-Saxons and the inferior, you know, Russians or Slavs. There's really that the mind, the ego, the masculine mind divides. It's always in duality. The feminine doesn't. It's always inclusive. It is always this visible reality and the invisible that underlines it. And this is what you're trying to do when you're reading. So reading is not a matter of just picking up a book, reading it from cover to cover, and then going on to the next book. You are trying to become whole. Your personal unconscious, the person that you are, and the collective unconscious that everyone and everything really is. You are bridging that bridge, and that's when you're becoming whole. And that's when you heal. That's really when you begin to heal. Even your physical symptoms will begin to heal. I know people that have actually cured the cancer. You know, cancer is one of the hardest things to cure. Well, because once it starts to spread, you don't know where to aim, because it's just everywhere. But I know people that when they've actually started to become whole, and they started to, for instance, write poetry, read the way I just told you to read, to take interest in symbols, in the feminine, the collective unconscious, the sickness started to go away. Because cancer, I think Campbell used to said it probably the best way. Cancer is when the head, the rational, the divisive masculine takes over the territory of the heart. Now here people are going to say heart means feeling, relationship. Yes, that's important, but the core of the feminine is intuition. The core of the feminine is your spontaneity, your threshold, being at the center that bridges your personal unconscious and collective unconscious. So that's how we read. You read not merely to remember things and learn the theory, or you can brag about how many books you've read or how many books are stacked up behind you. You know, show off that, geez, you know so many things. But have you experienced anything? Has it actually worked, the reading? Have you made contact with the unconscious? Have you become whole? Do you not just merely understand intellectually the feminine, but has the feminine actually talked through you as you? Okay, that's enough for today, and next time I will talk to you about which books to read. Now you already know which books to read because I've given you, but there are lots of things that you can buy these days quite cheaply, secondhand, and I'll recommend a few things for you next time. So until next time, thank you for listening, and see you then. Bye.